Hey guys, it's me, the dude who talks, and welcome to the much delayed continuity challenging follow up to episode 6. So I don't really have any new songs that I'm digging at the moment to discuss with you, so I thought I'll do something that I haven't done in a while, and that's talk about a gig that I've been to, and that is Weedeater at Factory 251 in Manchester. So initially I wasn't planning on doing a review of this show, but Mr. APF approached me while I was at the bar in Factory 251 while I was ordering a Southern Comfort, and he was like, "Are you doing a review?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I guess so. I don't want to be seen as a liar, so let's just get into it." So I came in when the first band just started, who were called Telekinetic Yeti, and they were like really cool. Two-piece band, very loud, automatically giving me Tusker sounds, Tusker vibes with their the sound. Heavy, crushing, but there was like a little bit of like heavy psych noodling in intervals. Vocals were quite like heavy, harsh, but there was some cleans in there. They played a really lengthy set. Well, it felt like it, but I did not tire of it one bit. I thought they were a fantastic opener to the night. So the next band was Mars Red Sky. Now, I really keep hearing about how good these guys are, and to be honest, I've never paid much attention and I never really checked them out. Only apart from a couple of songs here and there, like in the space of like months or something. So I'm not really too familiar with them, but after the set I was definitely like, I have missed out on these guys. They really knocked it out the park. The songs to me were like really blissful, but they have like loads of heavy moments where you're just like getting lost in the songs and headbanging at the same time. And normally when a vocalist says, "Oh, this is our last song," you go, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh, well, I think this is going to be a really long song, so it's all good to me." So, time for Weedeater. It has actually been a minute since I've seen Weedeater live. Last time I saw them was like a few years ago at Desert Fest, I do believe. I remember at that time there was a guy in front of us just talking non-stop. It was quite annoying. Anyway, tangent over. The sound check, I love how Dave from Weedeater does this like auction scat singing thing. Love to learn how to do that. Sounds like hip hop of the South. I love how he brandishes a bottle of Jim Beam like with a certain like grace and pizzazz. Talking about the set list now, I feel like they play more or less the same songs they have been doing for like each time I've seen them live, and like so, but they did have the faves, so they've played Wizard Fight, Mancoon, $20 Peanut, Hammer Handle, so all the faves were there, and also Give Me Back My Bullets. One thing I did notice in between songs, it was Dave was getting visibly annoyed with the monitor. He kept calling it piece of shit in between songs, and with each song that passes in between that, he was getting more and more angry. What else can I say? I always think that they are a solid, consistent band, Weedeater. Always knocking it out of the park live. Tonight was no exception. Always love seeing them live. So, I have got a gargantuan double album for you all to talk about, and that is the debut album from Orme, which is out now through Trepanation Records, and it came out on 420. Oh yeah. Formed in 2018, Orme are basically a stoner drone metal band from Hertfordshire featuring members of Everest Queen and Praetorian. They consist of Tom Clements on guitar and vocals, Jimmy Long on bass, Luke Fellin on drums and silence. The album was recorded at the XL Recording Studios in London by Andy Plowman and was mastered by Adam Richardson. I think with all that, let's just get into it. So, for those who want to know, the album consists of 2 tracks and clocks in at over 90 minutes. So we've got the first song, Nazarene, which starts off with a very sleep-esque riff. It's very transcendental, very meditative, and then the drone comes in and washes over it like a wave. And from this point, I can definitely tell that bong are a massive influence on these guys. You can also hear a faint drum beat throughout in the background, but the main focus here is the drone. It makes no rush on this song as it is 40 minutes long, although you can definitely start to hear faint chanting, and this is where the song takes a bit of more of a turn. The vocals come in at this point as well, very dark and satanic. Here's an extra.
Show man instead the raptures of thy kingdom. Infuse in him the grandeur of melancholy, the divinity of loneliness, the purity of evil, the paradise of pain. What's perverted imagination?
So upon first listen, I was not expecting anything like that at all. And there's like a lot of chanting throughout the background, which gives it that ritualistic feel. And the vocals are very like spoken word. However, there's a lot of bit of bellowing where Tom Clements like bellows with some power, and he does a lot of bit of screaming as well. And there's one moment where he screams out Satan, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really intense. Very mesmerising. I didn't feel like I wanted to turn back at this point as I was fully invested. And other than that, you definitely do get lost in like waves of drone, which is constant throughout the song. And if you watching this or listening to this review, you probably definitely have gathered that the pace of this album is going to be very glacial, and it is. There's some drum beats throughout which kind of change up the pace of the album just a little bit. However, there is definitely a payoff towards the end of the song where it goes into more like noodling and more like heavy psych territory, kind of like Earthless or Acid Mother's Temples vibes. The following song, Onward to Sarnath, starts off in more or less the same vein as the previous song. It's got those long drony passages, and the sleep-esque guitar effects used on the song has a similar footing, but there's a lot of different segments which make it stand out. There's a choral chanting with a guest vocalist, I hope I've got the name right, Shea Griffin Anchor, and also there is the use of didgeridoo, which is absolutely incredible, and what I like about it is that the didgeridoo gives this almost oppressive atmosphere in the song, like the waves and waves of drone wasn't evil sounding enough. You've got didgeridoo just giving it that much more oppression. Like the previous song, patience is definitely a virtue, especially with the runtime on this song, which is nearly an hour. But there is definitely a payoff, and there is like a slow, and I mean slow, build up to that payoff. As it, when it does pay off, it goes more into that like heavy psych territory, and it feels very climactic when it gets to that point. Nitpicks. I've got a few. If you don't really like long songs, I think you'd be best off avoiding this one. Now, I felt like on Onward to Sarnath, I felt like there were bits that were just stretched out to this on this song that made it a bit longer than it needed to be. I felt like the choral singing just went on for far too long. It was stretching on for 20 minutes. I know it's a very long song, it's drone, it's meant to be very long, but when you listen to it like constantly, like daily, I felt like I was just like thinking I kind of need this to get to the point, or just implement it a bit differently, like as a long song. Like, I had nothing against like the length at all. I just felt maybe they could have just done this a bit differently. And I do wish there was more didgeridoo on the song. I really do. Okay, so now we're on to the overall opinion of this album. Well, Orme's debut album is hugely ambitious, and gargantuan in scope. This could have been a hot mess, but I feel like it's very meditative yet a challenging listen, and it will appeal to people who are looking for something unconventional. If you really like long songs and just getting lost in the moment of waves and waves and waves of drone, I think this album is definitely for you. So for another review, I'm going to be talking about Hozomeen with the album The Void, which is out now. Hozomeen is a project birthed by Graham Thompson, who is from Newcastle upon Tyne. He has another solo project which is called C90 and has performed in countless other bands in the Newcastle area. I thought it was best to describe The Void from the words that Graham himself has mentioned, so I'm just going to quote what he's saying. The Void was an opportunity for me to challenge myself in terms of songwriting, but also to try and incorporate instrumentation I may not have previously used, and that you may not expect to hear on an album of this nature. Songs were primarily built from the drums up, with only a few guitar riffs written before drum recording had commenced. The rest were improvised drum ideas around which I built songs. With that out of the way, I think we should just get into this one. So for those who want to know, The Void consists of 8 tracks and clocks in at 43 minutes. We've got the opening track, which is called Involuntary Man's Laughter, which is like this sparse intro. It has a little bit of banjo playing and there's some like ambient machinery sounds going on in the background, but then it builds up towards the end of the song with that, and I'm sure he uses like an accordion at that point. So the first actual taste of the album is Call the Hogs, which instantly reminds me of Karma to Burn, very desert rock sounding. There's like a very distorted riff, very mid-pace, also very punchy. The vocals also remind me of Karma to Burn as well. It's like sounding like they're sung through a megaphone. Doesn't firmly set its roots into the desert rock territory, as it goes a little bit more left field towards the end of the song with more feedback noise. The following song, Tlak, starts off with like a decent riff and then veers slowly off the path. With some picking, and then it changes it up with a harder riff, and I'm thinking we're in Melvin's territory here. There's like a slow chunky riff which is constant throughout the song. I'm just going to play you an example of it. And it finishes off a little bit more left field with like a bit of violin, and then there's a little bit of a drum beat as well. Coursing is this instrumental song which starts off with this repetitive riff, almost like krautrock style, and if you hear closely you can hear a harmonica or what resembles one. Like I always say, if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. Another similar song which has a similar approach is Bulk. It uses bass but also has like the inclusion of brass instruments. And this is what I like with this album, the subtle use of other instruments. Another example of this is 1 kHz with the inclusion of xylophone on the song. Speaking of that song, Speaking of that song, 1 kHz sounds like something out of the Melvin's playbook, especially with the vocals. There's also the slow riff as well, but there's a more denser riff at the end of the song. I feel as the album nears the end point, it veers even more off path, especially with the song's Cleansing Breaths, which starts off with, I want to say, a koto, and as I said before, feel free to correct me. And then it goes into more like blues heavy psych territory, and it almost feels like a Kikagaku Moyu song. On to the nitpicks. I've only got one. This is an album that feels to me that is very experimental, and some of the songs kind of feel more like ideas than actual songs, which for some might not make it flow as an album, and to some listeners it might feel a little bit jarring. Overall, the fact that this album was done by one person and one person alone goes really high up in my books. The album definitely has a discordant feel to it, but I feel like that is the point of the album. It definitely has an unconventional approach to a conventional subgenre and is highly intriguing. And I really like that it was just made by one dude. So now I'm going to talk about the debut EP from Binge, which is called Too Fake. Binge are an instrumental math rock duo from Manchester featuring Rob Sewell on guitar, Mark Heron on drums, who was in on Ocean's Eyes. Binge have most notably toured with the likes of Lightning Bolt, Melt Banana, 72%, Colossal Squid, and quite a few more. Also, they've performed at Arctangent and Kendall Calling. So with that brief intro out the way, let's just get into Too Fake. Okay, so for those who want to know, Too Fake consists of 6 songs and clocks in at just over half an hour. So we've got opening song Melatronian, which comes out swinging from the gate, really fast paced, and it's constant, like it never really lets up for a second, and you're barely given time to digest things, as it just changes things up at like a drop of a hat. The riffs have that kind of metal-like sound to it, which I really like, and the drumming is consistent, yet so chaotic. Monosyllabic is short but very sweet. It feels like the song is just all rise and it is just constant, which is like a motif for these guys, I reckon. I feel like this song could have been the lead single on the EP. It just feels like quite accessible for these guys, but yet shows you what they're all about. The start of Rent Asunder sounds like the end of the song at the beginning, and for that part, it sounds like the song is played backwards, and if that's the case, that is really fucking clever. The riff on this song is also like really killer. It feels like if the bass on a Primer song was played on the guitar. It's just mental, so I'll just play you a clip of the song. Mood Hoover is another short but sweet song that consistently chugs at a rhythmic pace, and it just wants to propel you into a state of perpetual trance of almost like aggression. Acrostic is another similar song with the same vibes, however it goes from quick to like absolutely chugging heavy to even quicker, and I just feel like it's got a feeling of punk on this song as well, like punk for math rock or math rock for punks, one of them. The influences on this EP are definitely worn on the sleeve. Huge lightning bolt vibes, and also the off-kilter parts remind me a little bit of Hella. I love how the guitar and drumming go so well. It makes the album like this complicated tango dance of noise. It just feels like it's all off the cusp as well, and like it's like some part of jamming session, like to just like throw this like complex arrangement just off the top of the head, like it just came out of it. So, any nitpicks? Well, this isn't really a conventional EP by any means, so if you were looking something with that kind of familiar song structure, this EP might not appeal to you. Overall, Too Fake will definitely not give you earache. 6 songs that definitely pack a punch and demonstrates a lot of rhythmic complexity that will have you dance and headbang at the same time.